Well, good morning. It's nice to see you all. Um, you know, this is always a bit tricky, but really, in a world in which there's so much going on all the time, um, one of the best things we can offer as individuals is really our practice. You know, sometimes there's really not much more than you can do than really connecting through layers to deeper and deeper aspects of yourself in the certainty that things are shifting always, but they are shifting around a central core, which is awareness. And it is through gradually embodying more and more of that awareness, within ourselves, in our life, in our everywhere we go, that the qualities of those awareness are naturally being expressed. The qualities of those awareness, the qualities of really of our essential nature you know, are loving, are joyful, are compassionate, are not something that anybody in the right frame of mind would harm others. So our practice is extremely precious. I would not take it for. It's very easy to despair, and there's plenty of reasons to despair if one chooses to do so. But this is when we do our practice, when we pray, no? So we always talk about this. We have the two hands. So one hand is the hand of compassion, and if it's just compassion, then the world is so painful. Um, and then we have the hand of wisdom, the hand that can see through. If it's just wisdom, it gets cold, the heart gets cold. So we have these two aspects, and in between our hands, we're holding the world, we're holding experience. So know that your practice is tremendously precious, even those whatever few minutes you're putting to for formal practice, or a lot of you that come to I've talked over the last few days, um, you are sharing with me how the practice, which is not a practice, but we call it the practice of arriving and softening basically in any circumstance. And be on a flight, be on a meeting, be at work, you're at Kroger's. I was at the Kroger's yesterday at Livernois here in town, and that's a peculiar place. I had not been there in a long time. Diane is laughing. I mentioned it to Brooke, and she says, "Yeah, that place is like a different dimension." So, anyway, that was just a bit humor. If you're not from the area, whenever you come to the area, you should go visit the Kroger's in Livernois. You'll understand. Um, we have to be extremely observant as practitioners. From the point of view of the world, there's so many different opinions, and it's very funny how people complain exactly about the others doing exactly the same thing they are doing, but they don't realize it. Okay? In politics, in religion, in relationships, it's it has a layer of humorous and it has a layer of sadness too, because we just don't realize what we're doing. So as practitioners, and I assume you're here, so you have interest in practice, and that means that I put it in this handout. In this handout that I sent last night, I talked about awakened listening. I use this quote from the Gospel. Jesus says, "Pay attention to how you listen." Basically, to pay attention to how you listen, it's basically paying attention also to how you are manifesting yourself. And the sentence that I was using at the beginning of the handout was the last sentence from the previous handout, that I had sent. Ultimately, the essence of quality longevity And spiritual practices is the gradual dismantling of our self-centeredness. You see how it's very easy to observe from the outside, no? Like all these problems from, from a spouse, arguing with your spouse to a family member or a coworker to a war like we have now, you know, pretty much for the whole world. It just comes down to self-centeredness. Like there's nothing else. It's just, people saying this is like this because I think so. And of course, there's many nuances, but even the nuances, if you break them down, is to not having the ability to sit and listen and interact from a point in which you realize, oh, there's nothing but the divine. It's very funny. Again, it's between, I mean, funny is like a placement award, for not to say something else, but how all this religious fanaticism that pretends to be so righteous and have the right to destroy other things, it's participating in a world view, in a view of the divine that is completely partial and distorted. You know? So ultimately, our view should be as vast as the whole universe. Like what is it that you're encountering that is not the divine? There's nothing. So of course, it's very easy to see, to think, oh, this politician is doing this, is doing that, because it's extremely obvious. But for a practitioner, these obvious things are always a tool to reverse the view and see, okay, at what level am I doing this myself, either to my inner circle or through views, because you say, oh, this politician, this person is doing that. And are you generating the same kind of animosity that politician is generating towards others, thinking that you have the righteousness? Okay, I know we've gone over this before, but this is extremely important because you have to listen to yourself. As a practitioner, you have to constantly be thinking, the practice is not something you do a few minutes. Your religious observance, if you are a Catholic or a Hindu, whatever you are, a Muslim it's not just that time you go to the temple and you do the prayers and it's really this dismantling of the ego, of self-centeredness, that is separating you from the rest of creation, which is the divine itself. So as practitioners, we have to keep fine-tuning that. And that comes through honesty, you know, that comes through honesty. So all this to say that your practice is extremely, extremely precious, extremely precious. And the fact that, quite a few of you, when, the ones that I see more regularly, because you come to the clinic and you share with me, the fact that you are able to see how you're integrating this, that's a real deal. When you're in any circumstance that previously would have caused you to react emotionally in a way that had created more conflict, and you are able to see the situation and see what you're feeling. It's not about suppressing what you're feeling. Don't suppress what you're feeling. Just don't put it on others. Just own it. Your stuff is your stuff. It's fine. I have so much stuff all the time. Okay. Yesterday we had lunch, with some of you, and we're all sharing, and we're all going through more or less the same things. We're all, and we have situations with our parents, with our spouses, with our kids, with ourselves. Now with our coworkers. Okay, um, that's just expected. I mean, nobody would expect to have a life where there's no conflict, there's no challenge, there's no growth. That's all expected. As practitioners, what we should expect of ourselves is to bring the practice from an abstract context, from a fantasy, um, into our day-to-day relationships, into our day-to-day experience. So for me, that you come and tell me, oh wow, and it's funny because always comes, and this is where you see the conditioning. Every time, the first is an apologetic sentence. Well, I don't know if this is okay what I'm doing, but and then it says, wherever I go, or I was at work the other day, and this situation was happening, and I started soft arriving, and then softening. So don't be apologetic about that. Like this is exactly what these practices are meant to do. You know, the 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. Like those of you who are retired, you should be putting more time, than the rest of us who are still with, non-retired yet, if you can. But those practices are only those time, is just going to give you the foundation. If you are putting, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever, you're doing the rosary, you're doing all these things, and then the first thing that you encounter, your reaction is anger and being out of control and unawareness. So the practice is not sinking. I know this makes sense. I know this is very easy to understand. Um, but this is really the real deal. Okay, so let's do a little formal practice. So I was just saying this again to recap because I'm very happy that when you come and share your experiences with me, that's meaningful because especially with these Zoom meetings, I'm here by myself in my room and one never knows. But the fact that you come and you share, how you are trying to find the gold within the situations where you can bring this to heart, and how this is improving. So that's very helpful for me and very makes me happy. So if you want to make me happy, just be nice to everybody. If you really love me. Okay. So the practice at the beginning is this is arriving. And arriving is the simplicity of just being aware. So from an awareness, from distraction, from the mind being all dispersed. Sometimes the mind being very focused, but being focused on something that you are unaware of you. So the mind just comes and recognizes the agency of the moment. You are here. So this is the base with a B. Okay. The basis, the ground. And then naturally here you soften. Okay. So there's a physical softening that becomes the more you soften while staying firm, the channels start flowing, so it can become very pleasurable, very enjoyable. Almost when you have a nice piece of chocolate or something. It's like, oh, it's so nice. You soften. So you soften physically, and then you start softening the points of view. Okay. I have, of course, I have my political opinions and views, and I think things should be in a, there's a better way to go about things. We all should have our things, okay? But I also have, some friends and some people that I relate regularly, daily, that their views are completely opposed to mine, to a point that you would say, oh, how can you interact with these people? And it's tremendously enriching to me because I'm always thinking, this person that I think overall is a good person, a good family person and, cares for people and we share so many base values, and at the same time their actual views are so different. So I always dig. I ask questions. Say, wow, why, what this situation makes you think like this way? What I'm just always trying to understand. What am I missing? What could be, what could I learn from the situation? So that's part of the softening too. It's not just physical softening. The softening is softening your points of view, softening this grasping to, I have the truth. Because, so, when I talk to you, when you share stories, so there's a lot of arriving, softening, arriving, softening, arriving, softening. But when you have to arrive all the time, it also means that that arriving is, and the softening are not really taking ground. It's still like, happens for a moment and then goes away, happens for a moment and then goes away, which is totally normal. It's what we do. So the quality of the softening, your ability to let go of that self-centeredness is going to translate, which is the next step, is going to translate in the ability to sustain. Sometimes we call it focus. So for you to maintain that state of presence that is soft, it's only really going to be possible if you cultivate this, which is the fourth of the immeasurables, which is actually the first one in a way, this sense of equanimity. When things come, you don't have to reject them. You don't have to reject them so tight or grasp to them so tight, because that's what makes the experience of arriving and softening shaky. Yeah. Does that make sense? So I soften, but I still know I'm right, and soften, and I still know that I'm wrong, and that that person is wrong. It creates this back and forth. But if you can really um, just give up the need to be right, even when you might be right. I'm not saying you're wrong. Okay, there's some things that obviously are better than others. But then what we are looking is, so we arrive, we soften, and then most of you at this point should be really experiencing these times of where we are sustaining this clear awareness. They have to be longer, you know. Not they have to, but ideally they become longer, because it's in that sustaining that then we can move. And this has a lot to do with, what we're going to be, sharing later about the idea of listening. Um, if you want to be right and the other person has to be wrong, you cannot listen. If when my friends talk to me about all these, views that are very different, um, if I cannot have a mind of a researcher mind, if I'm going into the conversation with a premise, I'm never going to be listening, because I'm always going to be constantly looking for arguments to refute. So that's constantly taking me out of the central channel, out of the central channel. Now, if through the practice of arriving, softening, the practice of the alternated nostril breathing brings you to the central channel, the practice of the Yomahung is extremely important, because it polishes the central channel and it gives it space, so then you can rest there. Um, I was watching a very funny comedian yesterday. Brooke and I watch lots of stand-up comedy, and we're watching this guy yesterday, last night, and he was making a set of jokes about having joined. He's a black guy, young guy, super funny, and having joined a YMCA somewhere he lives. I don't know where he lives, and it's mostly white people. And he says that all these older white guys are walking around in the locker room with a towel showing their penis. And he's starting to go under. He said, "Am I going to be gay by being in the locker room looking at all these people?" So he makes a set of jokes there. So the point of this being is like, uh, you're not going to lose yourself because you open yourself to hearing, to listening what other people has to say. I mean, you are not going to. You're not going to become gay by looking at a penis. Sorry if this is too graphic today, but okay. You are either gay or not. I mean, it's not, it's not going to happen. Okay. So Sorry about that. But I get that makes the point across, yeah? So if you really want to experience the stabilization of your meditation, um, it's necessary to realize the equanimity, this idea of I don't have to grasp so tight to what I want. I don't have to push so hard what I don't want. Actually, I don't have to hold or grasp or push at all. So you arrive, you soften, and then that softening becomes very comfortable. Where does the trust for this to happen? And this is where I find religious fanaticism uh, very, very inefficient. I don't have an issue with the concept itself. You love God so much that, it's the best God in the universe. That's fantastic. But it just constrains you so much. Anything that is constraining you basically is taking you away from the divine. There's no, because if the absolute is everything there is, how can become like so tight be an efficient way to experience that? So the certainty, the feeling safe, it's just by gradually, and not even gradually, just determining to recognize it just makes sense that everything that is the divine. And therefore, anything that comes my way, it's also the divine. I might like it or not, I mean, you might go to a store and you have to get ice cream and you have, you like stracciatella and you like pistachio, that's fine, you know. But anything that you can perceive is just the experience of the divine itself. So that makes you feel safe. There's a sense of safety that then you don't have to be pushing so hard. So you arrive, you soften, and then through that determination to just be open to life, because in essence, um, everything is a manifestation of the divine. So that helps you sustain focus. So it is through that sustaining of focus that then you can actually really start the exploration of what is it that you are perceiving, the exploration of what is it that you are feeling. The practice is so personal, so unique. So what we share, what we practice together is a framework. But ultimately, that framework is not meant to be like I think you call it a cookie cutter. Yeah. Like it's not just one shape. It's like, Jim and I don't know if Tom is here, I don't see, but, they're amazing potters, and, like, so there's a complete freedom of creativity. I mean, the clay is the clay, so you have the clay, you have the water, you have whatever tools you're using. So the experience of your practice has to be completely personal. So this is why it's kind of like you should never be apologetic. Um, it's just like, oh, this is so beautiful. But the beauty doesn't really come from the arriving and the softening. That's just setting the basis. The beauty comes from being able to sustain and then naturally explore that. So the centering practice and the Omahong practice are incredible tools. All these things are just tools. Like again, like pottery. Imagine like, humanity has been using clay to make different shapes for, centuries. I mean, millennia, whatever, thousands of millions of years on. And there's so many different tools and so many different, shapes. But ultimately, it comes down to, people making things that they needed for their lives. So all these are tools that we have to use. But you only really get the essence of the tool if you really put time to use it. So let's do some of the alternating muscle breathing. When you can be at ease, then the practice is not mechanical. The practice is very integrated with the rhythm of the body. Then let's do another whole round of 9. Relish the breath, like this breath is really the breath that is keeping you alive. Anything that you're enjoying in your life, anything that you value, you're having it thanks to this breath. If you're Christian or Catholic or uh, this is the very breath that God gave at the beginning, to Adam. There's no two breaths. This is the breath. This very breath is the gift of life, the breath of life. Now, in the same way, a potter can shape the clay, you are using the breath to shape your life. So just make sure you give up any kind of expectation towards the practice, because that creates a lot of tension. Just when you're practicing, just practice full focus, relaxed. Do not try to impose on the practice any outcome. So you can just rest there. I'm going to read the refuge prayers. Just listen. And whomever is it that your main teacher, but we are talking about teacher at the level of Jesus or the Dalai Lama, Garchen Rinpoche, like somebody that really inspires you, you know, like the highest trust. So just visualize them above, in front of you, and they have the potential to transform. So just to the sublime teachers who have realized full awakening and unconditional love, not a partial glimpse awakening, and not a love that is just to those that like me, or to those that my close family, or not, just a love that is unconditional, that is kind of like no conditions, everybody. To the teachings, to realize that kind of state, that state of awakened love. And to those who share with me the path and that are ahead of me in the path, to that realization, I go for refuge until I reach full awakening. I'm not going to go for refuge to my partial bias opinions. That doesn't mean I'm not going to not have them, but those are not going to be the source of my focus. That's going to be like a secondary layer. Here, my commitment is I'm going to go for refuge to the honest state of being present, being awake, and having love in my heart. Without fear of what that's going to make me feel, without fear if that's going to make me review what I think. By the merit of practicing the six great virtues, uh, generosity, patience, joyful effort, um, wisdom, meditation, and proper ethics, may we all attain full awakening. May I attain the state in which my teacher, the mind of the teacher, is, for the sake of all sentient beings. So when you do this, the teachers, the lineage blessings just naturally shower on you. And those blessings just, surround, fill your energy system, your body, and specifically come to your heart. So you visualize the teacher in the heart, and at the same time, you visualize yourself in the heart of the teacher. So the heart of the teacher is just not a physical place, it's just a state of love, of presence. And again, this doesn't mean that you will not ever have an emotion that, that you get upset. This means that your commitment is to constantly go back to the state of wakeful, loving awareness. Especially with yourself. So now we can read together the motivation prayers. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they always rejoice in the happiness of others. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all illnesses that afflict the bodies and minds of beings be healed, and may no more illnesses ever occur again. All mother sentient beings, limitless space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious awakening. Buddha and Jesus, you know, I know I know I mention this often because basically the advice that Jesus gives more time on the Bible is mind your own business. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but um, the Buddha said, tame your own mind, don't tame the mind of others, especially in contexts where your reach is very minimal. Continue looking on what is it that you're feeling, what is it that you're saying. 5 element purification mantra. Om Ahom. Eyam Kaham Ram Lam Shude Shude Ah. Om Ahom. Eyam Kaham Ram Lam Shude Shude Ah. Om Om Ram 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 Sude Sude Ah. So who is a sublime teacher? We say to the sublime teachers. So a sublime teacher is somebody whose love is non-partial, whose love is not has no conditions. And often you encounter people like that, um, in day to day. These are people who might not be meditation practitioners. They're just people who really have a good heart. So it's very useful. This is why it's very important to talk to people and to be able to listen to them because you just learn so much. Uh, you don't really know what people have gone through to have the kinds of views, and it really comes to safety. Like people feel safe in different ways, and we've learned to try to fish love, from our surroundings in different ways. So, you know, when you are able to pass the first layers and just listen to people and see, people will tell you amazing things. Their lives are fascinating. So this is why it's very beautiful just to try to experience this sublime state, which is just a state of openness. It doesn't require much, just a state of openness. Um, and just, years, sometime back, I read a quote from Tony Robbins, who it really like was very useful for me. He says, our real problem is to expect that we're not going to have problems. If you observe like all the resistances that we have, why we get so tight, why we need to do all these practices, because internally, we expect things to be, even though we might say no, there's no, no, of course I understand. No, no. That's where the honesty comes from, you have to say. But, we expect that things aren't going to happen. So then we get all worked out. So the sublime quality is this openness to whatever manifests. And again, of course, you should have your opinion. You should have your own predilection. But that should be a second layer. The first layer should be this natural openness. So that's how we practice a healing smile. We smile to the earth. Yes, so let's do a bit of the healing smile. We smile to the earth. And, just this implies visualization. There's a sense of imagination, where you're feeling but then it actually becomes, there's a physical sense where your energy, your awareness is just extended down the feet. And this practice is important because it also gives us a wider experience. I'm not just my physical body, but I'm also like, I have this energy body that is very vast. So smiling to the earth. And at some point, there's this sensation where you connect with the center, the heart of the earth, and then the earth is happy. Imagine a mother that her child smiles to them. Those of you who are mothers or have, little kids around, that when they smile at you is so nice. Yeah. Yesterday we had a special guest in our lunch. Jim brought their little granddaughter, super sweet. She was so sweet and smiling there and happy. So the earth has that thing, no? Like we might think, oh, it's just a chunk of rock. Well, not really. Okay. So then you're just participating now oh, of this relationship. So this energy, not just a sense, flows around you to the degree in which you can take it. Like the supply is endless. How much can you take? So how much can you take is based on your ability of being soft or being tight. So then the energy just comes around you in this beautiful column. We call this a heavenly earth column, cosmotelluric chimney column. And then comes through your feet up, into your heart, and then it keeps going down to your crown. Then it extends up, and above the head, the arms reach. This distance, it's important. I don't want to go into all the specific details now, but this distance is important where you stretch your arm and your hand is flat. We call that the higher end of the higher 12. Okay. There's a whole set of energetic structures that go in there, especially when we're doing later mantra practices that are set up. So it's important, or it's useful to start getting used to this structure. So, up there's this beautiful flower, it's a beautiful lotus, which is kind of a sign of purity and respect. And then there's this sun, and inside of the sun is your teacher, or or just the sun if you don't have a specific teacher. So from your heart, your smile, the smile of the earth, is going out your crown and goes into the heart of that sphere, into the heart of the teacher. And the teacher just shines because he's also happy. So those of you who are dads also, it's like, oh, your kid or your grandkid or you smiles at you and it's just so nice. So naturally that smile just shines around you and on top of you and starts filling the body. So it shines. So the important part, or one of the keys here is we're activating first the ascending energy of the earth, which is yin. Then we're activating the descending energy of the heavens, that is yang. So the it is through the mingling, through the union, the merging of those ascending and descending energies. And this is very much like, uh, a couple of lovers, like those energies are always looking for each other. And through our awareness, we can actually connect them. So naturally, it's also very healing, can be very blissful. So now you're all around you, like from the front to the right, back, the left. You're just surrounded by this beautiful, vibrant, golden rainbow, of the five elements. Um, Space is energy. Sometimes, some people will say, well, this is like a space of protection. But here where it's not so much protection, it's like this space that you are just inside of this space, like cocooned in here in a way, but it's not locked like a border. It's not like not Sarnia there. Um, uh, it's a space that anything that comes in contact with this, actually, it also participates of the same qualities. And then naturally the light descending from the heavens, mingling with the light of the earth on your surface, on the head, on the face, okay, going down the front of the body, down the stomach, down the legs, the feet, and down the side of the body. When you do this on your own, you can take as much time as you want. And then on the side, and down the back and down the left side. Just be systematic. At least at the beginning, it's better to be systematic. So you're surrounded by this beautiful light. You're covered by this beautiful, vibrant light. That is a perfect union of heaven and earth. And then the light goes in the crown and fills up your body like this beautiful vase. So, at your own pace, the feet, inside the feet, inside the calves, the thighs, the abdomen, the, the lower abdomen, the stomach area, the chest, the arms, the head. Tongue is touching the upper palate. Fingers is better if they put them like this, resting on the thighs. Spine is straight but relaxed. Okay, you should not be slouching in a couch, or by now you should know how to sit or practice. So you keep softening, keep softening, keep softening. Keep sustaining, keep softening. And then let's do a few of the Om Hum breath where you're breathing in Om, feeling Ah in the area of the navel, and then exhaling Hum. I cannot overemphasize the the usefulness of the Om Hum breath. There's different patterns that you can do, that are, but for now, in general, for our group, I think it's just very simple. There's just breathe Om, hold Ah for a moment, and then Om. So you're listening to the breath, and the breath, the sound of the breath carries, like, it's not a very hard Om, Ah, Hum. You don't have to be, it's just like the breath, the sound of the breath carries like almost like a little uh, trace of the syllable Om, Ah, Hum. The sounds Om, Ah, Hum are the sound representations of a mind, a body, and an energy that are in state of total purification, okay, total state of presence. So we're using them as tools. We bring them into our awareness, we run them through our energy system, with the objective that gradually our system is going to be more and more aligned with those qualities. And this is completely non-denominational, it's just uh, patterns of sound, vibrational frequencies that activate certain qualities. Sometimes it's called the Vajra breath, which means the flow of indestructible wakefulness. So you're feeling the breath, the sounds. You are listening to the breath with the sounds. And it's filing away like you're filing a piece of iron or something. It's filing away this hardness of the ego. You don't have to do anything, it's just automatic. You just have to remain with your awareness resting on the sounds, listening to the sounds. So, and I think it's very, very important for you to realize, is this practice benefiting me? You know, like, for example, I talk a little bit and then we start doing, some of the steps. And especially once we arrive to the alternating nostril breathing, you can feel, within the first two breaths, the energy of the group just completely settles, So I don't know if that's what you have to feel in your own awareness. Is this helping me? Like a couple of weeks ago, I had a patient, it's a college kid that, his mind is very overactive and, uh, part of it is, just, you know, normal. Part of it is, college kids, schedule and activities. And so very nice kid. I've treated him, since he was maybe, 7 years old. So I know these, some of these kids I know for so many years. So it's really nice to see. So he comes and he asks me, hey, you have to, do you remember that meditation you told me 10 years ago? Now I really want to practice it. I said, okay. So I started doing the alternating nostril breathing. We started doing together. After a couple of breaths, he opened his eyes wide and says, my mind is so calm, you know? So this is where the honesty comes in place. Like you have to really determine, is this really helping me? So this is like if you were talking to, just a basic survey. Is this helping me? Yes or no? If it's helping me, am I doing it enough to help me enough? Yes or no? Uh, if I'm not doing it, if I'm doing it, great. If I'm not doing it, why I'm not doing it? Okay. So we want, the world to be a much better place. We really have to start like on ourselves. So the things that you feel are helping you, make sure you include them regularly in your life. You know, just commit to something small, but just make sure you do it every day. That would be my suggestion. I know most of you have a regular practice, so I praise you for that. Okay, so I send this handout, Awaken Listening, Creating Sanctuaries of the Heart. Where, when we talk of sacred places, of, sanctuary, some sort of shrine, a sacred place, we tend to think of an external building or an external site where we go, you know. So part of my intention with these meetings, with this trip we're taking, and you know, just having the meetings together, is to remind you something that you know, or you know, or maybe just to make you aware that what makes the sacred site is not the site itself, is actually the awareness of the person who goes there. Okay? So anywhere where you are joining a pure intention with sustained clear attention, you are creating a space that is a sanctuary. Heart in this case just means now, means the present, the present. Okay. So um, over the years in clinical practice, I can tell you that the complaint I hear most often, and you would think, oh, it's back pain or, you know, like neck pain or insomnia or whatever. Those are like superficial complaints that, you know, are related to the physical body, obviously are important. But the complaint I hear more often, it's people not being heard. Okay. Very clearly, uh, people either clearly verbalizing it or just implying it of not being heard. Like whomever is in environment. Interestingly enough, usually it's always like comes from the closest relationships, you know. So usually men usually don't complain about this. It's mostly women complaining or sharing about their spouses, you know, not being, you know, hearing kids about their parents, you know, parents about their kids, you know. So um, it's very interesting how it's something because if you would go to ask this person, you know, for example, when, you know, um, a wife will complain, oh, you know, my husband, this and that. And, you know, over the years we've developed, and it's nobody in this group, okay? In this group, everybody's doing fantastic, okay? It's just other people, okay? But it's very relevant because it happens all the time, okay? Um, which, so the main complaint is this thing. Sorry, no, I lost my thought. The main complaint is this thing. So not being heard, okay? So, oh yeah. So it's very interesting because if you would ask the other person is certain that they are excellent listeners. Okay. Like it's that again is between funny and sad because it's like, oh, you think you're perfectly listening, but this other person says you're not listening at all. So I have, you know, taken, you know, trying to improve over the years on myself, you know, I mean, I hope I'm little by little improving. Um, you know, I have also received many complaints in my house of no, not listening. Okay, so it's not like I didn't do it out of pure pleasure. Um, so the reflection on this is very important because the we all have to listen because you know we communicate through each other. You know, we have to listen to others. We have to listen to ourselves. So refining the way in which we listen becomes a very you know, I'll use the word powerful. Spiritual practice. Like there's no, you know, because from distraction, so it's the most common thing, you know, like somebody's talking or telling you something, but you know, you're reading the newspaper or you what, and you're not even paying any attention. Okay. So that would be level zero of listening, you know. You may even be pretending to be listening, you know, but you are like, you know, totally out. Okay. So that's, and you know, you can reflect on this, see which there's not going to be a survey about it, but somebody posted something here. Um, there's not going to be a survey, okay? So that you don't have to share anything here. But so we move, so the idea is to move from not listening, you know, even if you are in the room and you're maybe pretending to be listening, to then realize the next level of listening is this listening that is very self-centered, okay? Here I put a chart here. Um, So this listening is the listening that kind of most of the time we do, okay? This self-centered listening, and this is why, at the beginning I started talking about really reflecting on how we're perceiving the world, because the root of so many issues is this very self-centered listening. You think that you're listening, and you might even be paying attention, but if you observe yourself, you're listening to refute. Okay, you're listening. You're still right. The other person is still wrong, and you are just. This is a very self-centered ego listening, where you're trying to. You're basically listening, trying to see what you're going to say next. I imagine most of you can recognize this type of listening, yeah. Which you know, and again, all these things. Some situations that sometimes you just don't want to listen. So sometimes the no listening level is fine, and sometimes you have to do some self-centered listening, because you have to be trying to figure out what am I going to sing next. Okay, but these modes are not very efficient. Okay, then the next level of listening will be what we call the empathetic listening. Okay? So here we're switching the awareness from just no awareness, distraction, to focus on ourselves. So now the empathetic listening, it's focusing on the other person. You're actually starting to pay attention, okay? And you're just really trying to listen. Okay, so here I wrote, focus on the other person. Here we are listening to understand, okay? Which is obviously this is a quantum jump. Okay? And this is what most people, when they complain about not being heard, they are complaining about the first two levels, okay? They're not being heard at all, or the other person being heard, the other person listening, but listening to correct. I was at a family lunch, a couple of weeks ago, and there were two people who were in the meeting there, and there was a daughter and a mother, and everything the mother was saying, the daughter was jumping to correct instantly, and you could see the frustration build up, okay? Because yeah, maybe the opinions, whatever, but people want to be heard. People want to be, express themselves. So it's very, very important, especially for those of us who are on professions or environments where we are used to having to give people advice. Years ago, when I did this pilgrimage in El Camino, one of my vows was I limited very much talking. I would not gonna talk much unless I was asked, and it was to give zero advice, like zero advice, unless somebody really asked me for something, because the natural tendency is to correct, to fix. Okay, so you think you might be listening, but as long as you are fabricating in your mind what you're gonna say next, and you have the tendency to correct, you are really, I mean, you're listening to some information coming, but you're not listening to the person. Now, not that you would do you would do this at all, especially to your young adult kids. Okay. So here on this chart on page 2, empathetic listening. This is really fundamental, and this is very, very difficult. Not fixing, as long as you're listening to fix. If somebody asks you, can you help me with this? I want to share this by you, and I want to hear what you say. I want to know your opinion. But that's like a 1% of the cases, so if you are trying to fix, if you are judging and you say, no, I'm not judging you, it's pretty much just, that's where the honesty comes into place, okay? Or you're preparing your response, you are practicing still like self-centered listening, because usually when we're trying to fix, We're just projecting our own agenda so we don't have to be uncomfortable. I brought up this example a couple of times, and I find it hilarious because um, the fathers and sometimes the mothers of young adult men who grow a mustache, sometimes they would come complaining about the mustache. You know, I love like I think mustache in younger men looks pretty good. Some of the mustaches. So I wish I could have a mustache that looked as good as some of them. Sometimes Charles has a fantastic mustache, yeah. And sometimes, like it's pretty funny, and it's 100% the father or the mother saying, "This makes me uncomfortable." They will never say that with words, but this is what they are actually saying. I think this might not be good for his professional environment. I think must not be good. So you're fixing, you're judging, okay? Um, let the kid have the mustache, okay? Deal with yourself. So the empathetic listening is where really we can totally transform relationships, and it can be tremendously challenging because, of course, we know better. But so here we're going from distraction, from an to awareness of the I, and now you're moving into awareness of the other, which in a sense is awareness of the we. Okay? So when you develop this ability of empathetic listening, and this is why at the end I put some, a couple extra tips here. Uh, you also have to be careful not to. This doesn't mean that you are gonna put yourself out there to be completely drained emotionally or completely become now one with the drama. Okay? So it's also this is why the practice of arriving, softening, sustaining. So you are engaging in these conversations, you're engaging in these contexts as with a percentage of it as a practice. So you are also practicing on losing yourself. Okay? So then the next level of listening, the integrated listening, is when you are not listening to respond, you are not listening to empathize and to offer just space, but you're actually starting to take into consideration all the other clues. Okay, it's not just the words or the emotions, you're just observing visually, the gestures, the changing on tone, and here you start also including the energetic feel of the situation. Okay? Sometimes people, when they come to the clinic, they want to know, what is the diagnostic process, and we've talked with Charles about this sometimes, so we observe the tongue, and I mean, obviously, you take a clinical history and you observe the tongue and take the pulse, but for me, the main thing is I just look around the person, what's happening, energetically. Um, and that's nothing mysterious. It's like you just have to go through the different layers of listening. And then there's a point where you just feel comfortable. You can never have an integrated listening as long as you're uncomfortable with what the other person is sharing. Because then you are constraining yourself. So you might be trying to fix, but that fixing, it's going to come across as an opinion. It's going to come across as a judgment. Very often, when you develop this kind of more integrated listening, you realize that there's really nothing to fix. The only thing that really needed to be fixed was your own inability to be open to how things are. Okay, so here it says integrated listening, the whole field. So you still focus on the other person, but there's this sense of openness. Okay, and this is nothing uh, sophisticated or esoteric. It's just you are gradually feeling more and more at ease with being present, and more at ease with whatever is presented in front of you. So naturally, from an awareness to awareness of the self, okay, then to awareness of this we relationship, okay, and then naturally, which is ultimately what we're aiming at, is this state of non-dual listening, and this goes to the beginning of the conversation we started having. Gradually, through this state of settling your mind, being able to arrive, to soften, to maintain that state of presence, and then to explore what is it that we are perceiving, then you realize that there's actually no other out there. Okay, that everything that you're perceiving is just the expression of consciousness. So that's what we call the state of non-dual listening. Here it says, focus is a state of receptive presence beyond I and you. Okay. So sometimes we call this the union of the three spheres, the union of the one who listens, the one who is communicating, and the actual act of communication as just blending into one state of presence. So again, this topic, it's very, very vast because it goes into the very heart of human relationships, into, of boundaries. And so this is just a little, you know, a little tip, some tips to make you aware. But I would really encourage you to take, like, nobody can tell me, I don't have time to practice. It doesn't matter if you have the ability or the discipline to, put your time, formal time a day to follow the structure of the practice, but you're listening to people all day long. So can you incorporate these principles and just start noticing where I am not paying attention, where I am just paying attention partially to continue imposing my will, where I am actually starting to pay attention in a way that is less judgmental. I'm stopping to fix people. Um, am I having more through that progression, more the ability of developing a more encompassing way to relate? Am I just starting to include something beyond what the words are conveying and the emotions are conveying? And am I being to bring that to a state where I can just rest and rejoice? So nobody can tell me I don't have time to practice this because you talk to so many people every day. You're talking to yourself. So just briefly here at the end, page 3, listening as a sanctuary of the heart. So again, this goes back to use listening as a practice. You don't have time to practice meditation because the day is busy. It's okay. Just bring your awareness to the listening process. Listening is very healing. This I have observed over the years. I would have never thought because, I was probably, I mean, not probably, I was somebody who, would think that I'm listening. I'm a good listener, because my mom told me that I was perfect. Yeah. She still tells me to today. Yeah. That's the problem with mothers, making their kids, especially the older kids, believe that the oldest and they are perfect. Surprise, we are not. Um, so listening is very healing. It's very healing for the other person, and it's very healing for yourself because you have to start like letting go of this constant sense of being in a defensive mode. Okay. I brought the example of, my friends who have very extreme political views that are different from mine. And it's just very relaxing, instead of being there all worked out. So, okay, just tell me, I mean, how do you see this? What am I missing? Um, and being comfortable with silence, so we tend to be very uncomfortable with silence. Um, listening to yourself, checking on yourself, like, very often, this is one another of the complaints that I hear a lot in the clinic, and that people being completely overwhelmed, overworked, overstretched because of not being aware of listening to themselves and learning how to say, no, this I can't do. This is too much. So part of the listening implies listening to yourself. And when you start listening to yourself, you're going to have to come to terms with the fear of being disliked or being disapproved. So many times we say yes to things we would say no out of fear of being disliked. Um, Emotional maturity and listening, these are just some one-liners. You can care without being controlling. Okay, so you can listen without having to fix. This is guys, you know, most men are we're fixers. We have to fix something. Brooke says something that she doesn't want me to hear. She doesn't want anything. She usually doesn't even want my help. And in my mind, I'm just 20 steps ahead, fixing the whole thing. you know and 100% of the time that leads to disaster. you know so and this is also extremely important, like the other person's emotions belong to them. So even if you have done something in the context that has created something, I mean, their emotions still belong to them. How they respond to that is, it's still, you know. So, okay. This listening does not mean absorbing another person's emotions. Um, True listening does not require emotional entanglement. So, these some tips for you in which you can bring the practice, extend the practice to, more and more layers of your day to day, and how this idea of sanctuaries of the heart, it's not just an external temple where you go, because otherwise we have continue having this very distorted view of spirituality, of religion, of it's day to day. Cannot not be day to day. Okay. So time is running out. By the virtue of our practice, may the sublime awakened mind, the heart of unconditional love, arise where it has not arisen, where it has arisen may never decline, but continue to grow forevermore. Yeah. So whatever, even a single ounce, a single grain of love has been born, may it continue to grow, may it never diminish. Great glorious teacher, grant your blessings so that my mind and the mind of all beings without exception turn to the teachings of awakening and unconditional love. Okay. Everywhere in the world, especially all these people who are in positions of power that have the ability to help or harm so much. May true love, love that seeks to resolve conflict without violence, be be born, and may all of those who are around that might not have the ability to make decisions at that level, but may we have really the ability to hold accountable and to demand and not to justify behaviors that in other contexts would be unjustifiable. Let's not play mind games to trying to bend and say, no, actually, this is okay, this is not okay, but okay. May we have the courage to say, no, actually, this is just not okay. Great glorious teacher, grant your blessings that the minds of myself and all beings without exception turn to the teachings of awakening and unconditional love. Grant your blessings so that the teachings lead us to the path. Okay. Grant your blessings so that the path may clear away confusion. Grant your blessings so that confusion may transform into wisdom. Whatever true joy and happiness there is, all comes from a mind that seeks to benefit others. Therefore, may all mother sentient beings, limitless space, have a mind of loving kindness. May all self-grasping ignorance, the cause of all intolerable suffering that Mother Sentient Beings, limitless space, must endure in the six realms, be fully pacified. And may all beings care for one another with altruistic compassion. By the merit of having practiced healing meditation in this way, for the benefit of myself and all other beings, may all beings without exception be well and happy. May there be peace in all lands. May that be the priority. May there be peace. You see all these images. It doesn't matter where they are. It's completely heartbreaking to see people suffering in this way. May there be prosperity in all households. May greed be transformed into generosity. May there be joy in all hearts across all time and space. And may all the motivation prayers made for the well-being of beings come to fruition. So may our practice continue to expand for the benefit of others. Yeah, Shai's right. Being comfortable with silence. Good, beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I'll think it's always a pleasure to share, and I hope this is useful. And I know a lot of these things are obvious, and I know a lot of these things you know them, but the more I reflect on them, the more they help me. So our practice really matters. So let's just continue practicing together. Okay. Thank you so much. It's good to see you all. Pam, Diane, Lynn, and Amy. Nice to see you, Amy. My lovely sister, my lovely dad, my lovely mother-in-law, Charles, Diane. You are all lovely. Beth, Joanne, Kim, Laura, Linda, and Marisa, Melissa, and Dave, Missy, Narcisse. Great to see you all. Yeah. So I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Faran.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Fran.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.